What happens when a studio known for Rudolph, Frosty, and glittering Christmas cheer decides to go wild? Rankin Bass wasn't just about jingling bells and red noses. Behind the classics were experiments beautiful, bizarre, and sometimes downright confusing that television quietly buried. From talking mice to samurai swords, these forgotten projects reveal a studio far stranger than you remember. So grab your cocoa, dim the lights, and prepare to rediscover 20 Rankin Bass cartoons that time forgot, starting with one you've probably never seen. Number 20. The New Adventures of Pinocchio, 1960. Before Rudolph ever blinked his glowing nose, Rankin Bass brought life to a wooden boy. The New Adventures of Pinocchio was the studio's first major stop-motion series, a prototype for everything that came after. Produced in collaboration with Dentsu Studios in Japan, it featured over 100 short episodes following Pinocchio and his endlessly patient father, Geppetto. The animation was crude compared to later masterpieces, with stiff limbs and minimal backgrounds, but you can see the DNA of Rankin Bass's later magic taking shape. Each episode was a tiny moral fable, though the morals often got lost in the sheer weirdness. Villains like the fox and cat were reimagined as slapstick goons, and the tone swung between wholesome and chaotic. Critics were baffled, but kids were hooked at least for a while. When smoother, flashier cartoons from Hanna-Barbera took over the airwaves, Pinocchio's jerky charm looked ancient overnight. Still, it deserves respect. Without this awkward puppet show, there'd be no Rudolph, no Frosty, and no stop-motion holiday tradition at all. Watching it now feels like peeking at the studio's first rough sketch unpolished. Yes, but undeniably the spark that lit the snowstorm. Number 19. Tales of the Wizard of Oz, 1961. Imagine The Wizard of Oz reimagined as a zany sitcom where Dorothy drops by every week. That's what Tales of the Wizard of Oz attempted, a surreal series turning Oz into a neighborhood comedy. Each episode followed the Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Cowardly Lion as they bungled simple tasks and got lectured by the wizard himself. It was bright, cheerful, and utterly odd. The show was one of Rankin Bass's earliest color productions and featured the first cartoon version of Oz ever made for television. Animation was handled by Crawley Films of Canada, giving it a distinct look almost like paper cutouts come to life. The writing leaned on absurd humor rather than story continuity, making it feel like a fever dream of puns and pratfalls. Viewers didn't quite know what to make of it. It wasn't faithful enough for Oz purists, yet too literary for slapstick-loving kids. NBC aired it briefly, then quietly buried it under newer shows. But its spirit lived on many design cues, and voice actors resurfaced years later in Return to Oz and other Rankin Bass specials. In hindsight, it's the missing link between fairy tale sincerity and Saturday morning chaos. Number 18. Return to Oz, 1964. If Tales of the Wizard of Oz was Rankin Bass dipping its toes into the land of Oz, Return to Oz was a full plunge into Technicolor strangeness. This stop-motion special expanded on the same universe, bringing back Dorothy and her eccentric companions for another round of offbeat adventures. But this wasn't the dark Disney version decades later. This was pure Rankin Bass whimsy, wrapped in glitter and confusion. Produced in their signature animagic style, the puppets were both charming and creepy, with exaggerated smiles and eyes that caught too much light. The story followed the gang rescuing the Emerald City from new villains while learning about friendship and courage again. Critics called it a children's playhouse on sugar. Audiences tuned in once, blinked, and forgot it ever aired. Yet, technically, it was impressive. The team refined lighting, textures, and motion that would define their later classics. It's also notable for being among the first trans-Pacific TV co-productions between Japan and the US, a partnership that would shape the look of Rankin Bass forever. Return to Oz didn't just revisit a world, it tested whether stop-motion could dream bigger. It failed commercially, but succeeded in crafting a visual blueprint for the studio's golden age. Number 17. The Ballad of Smokey the Bear, 1966. Before the Smokey Bear Show lectured kids about campfires, Rankin Bass tried something more poetic. The Ballad of Smokey the Bear was a primetime musical special blending folk storytelling with stop-motion animation, narrated by James Cagney. Yes, the Hollywood gangster legend, it retold Smokey's origin as a bear cub rescued from a forest fire and transformed into a national symbol of responsibility. The animation was lush, filled with deep forest hues and a surprising melancholy that set it apart from most children's specials of the era. Instead of wacky sidekicks, Smokey was surrounded by somber forest creatures mourning the damage caused by human carelessness. It wasn't a typical cartoon, it was a moral ballad wrapped in artistry. Unfortunately, viewers weren't sure who it was for. Kids found it too serious, adults found it too childish, and networks found it too slow. After one airing, it disappeared. Yet it deserves a quiet applause for ambition. It showed Rankin Bass could blend ecological themes with emotional storytelling long before environmentalism became a TV buzzword. Watching it today feels like hearing a forgotten protest song, echoing through a pine forest, soft, sad, and ahead of its time. Number 16. The Cricket on the Hearth, 1967. Charles Dickens and Christmas seemed like a match made in heaven for Rankin's Bass. But The Cricket on the Hearth proved that not every Dickens story had the magic touch. Released just a year before, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer became a holiday juggernaut. This special told the tale of a poor toy maker, his blind daughter, and the guardian cricket who guides their fate. Voiced by Danny Thomas and Roddy McDowell, it had heart, charm, and Victorian atmosphere to spare. The problem? It was crushingly sad. The pacing felt like a lullaby that never woke up, and kids expecting festive cheer got moral fables about poverty and loss instead. Critics called it beautiful but bleak, and audiences quietly moved on to merrier specials. Still, it stands as a technical gem. The stop-motion work glows with handcrafted texture, and its music soft, haunting foreshadows the emotional reach Rankin Bass would achieve in The Little Drummer Boy. Today, The Cricket on the Hearth feels like a ghostly carol from another era, delicate, forgotten, and strangely touching once you give it a chance. Number 15, Mouse on the Mayflower, 1968. Before talking reindeer took over the holidays, Rankin Bass tried to make Thanksgiving the next big TV tradition. Mouse on the Mayflower told the story of the pilgrim's journey through the eyes of a tiny mouse named Willem, voiced by Tennessee Ernie Ford. It mixed historical adventure with whimsy, adding songs, storms, and the kind of wide-eyed optimism only a cartoon rodent could deliver. It was one of Rankin Bass's few animated features produced entirely in Japan by Toei Animation, giving it a rich, painterly style. The sea scenes shimmered, the pilgrim costumes were intricate, and the tone was surprisingly solemn for a family special. But while visually lovely, it never quite caught fire. The humor was mild, and the pacing too slow for restless kids. Still, it deserves more credit than it gets. It was one of the first attempts to animate the Thanksgiving story without leaning into slapstick or stereotypes. The fact that it even aired nationally right before the age of Scooby-Doo mania was a miracle in itself. Forgotten today, Mouse on the Mayflower feels like a lost experiment in holiday storytelling, sincere, delicate, and a reminder that even the smallest hero once tried to sail into history. Number 14, The Mad, Mad, Mad Comedians, 1970. What if Rankin Bass made a cartoon for your grandparents? That's exactly what happened with The Mad, Mad, Mad Comedians, a bizarre TV special that mashed together legendary vaudeville acts like Jack Benny, George Burns, and Phyllis Diller, all voiced by the real stars themselves. The concept was wild. Turn old-school stage routines into animation, and hope audiences still cared. The animation was broad, the gags ancient, and the pace frantic. Imagine slapstick jokes from the 1930s delivered with psychedelic color schemes straight out of the 1970s. Kids had no idea who these people were, and adults found the cartoon too chaotic to follow. Critics called it an overstuffed time capsule, yet in hindsight, it was a treasure. Rankin Bass used experimental animation techniques that would later resurface in Mad Monster Party. It was also one of the first shows to credit comedy as cultural heritage, decades before variety nostalgia became mainstream. Watching it now is like flipping through your grandparents' scrapbook with a laugh track and a punchline that never quite lands, but still warms you with charm. Number 13. Here Comes Peter Cottontail, 1971. Long before the Easter Bunny had memes or movies, Rankin Bass gave him a full-blown musical adventure. Here Comes Peter Cottontail was their attempt to do for Easter what Rudolph did for Christmas. Narrated by Danny Kaye, it told the story of a young bunny competing against a villain named Irontail, voiced by Vincent Price for the title of Chief Easter Bunny. It had everything: stop-motion magic, talking eggs, time travel, and a villain riding a bat. The sets sparkled, and the songs were impossibly catchy. But despite glowing reviews, it never achieved Rudolph's staying power. Easter just didn't have the same annual broadcast pull, and TV stations didn't know where to slot it. Still, the special became a cult favorite among animation fans. Its message about perseverance and kindness remains timeless, and Vincent Price's deliciously sinister voice work is unforgettable. Here Comes Peter Cottontail wasn't just a holiday cartoon, it was proof that Rankin Bass could make even pastel bunnies feel epic. Number 12. The Red Baron Rides Again, 1973. Yes, you read that right. Rankin Bass made a sequel to The Red Baron. This time, the Flying Ace returned in an even stranger series filled with slapstick dogfights, groovy music, and daydream-like humor. The show treated the historical figure less like a World War I pilot and more like a cartoon superhero with a biplane and a catchphrase. The animation was sharp and colorful, clearly influenced by pop art. Each episode turned the skies into a circus of explosions and one-liners. But audiences were confused. Was this for kids or adults? The mix of war references and cartoon goofiness didn't land smoothly. The show lasted barely a season before being grounded for good. Yet, looking back, it feels ahead of its time. Its kinetic visuals predicted the over-the-top style of later cartoons like DuckTales and Animaniacs. The Red Baron Rides Again might have crashed on takeoff, but it left contrails of creativity behind. Number 11. The First Christmas, the story of the first Christmas snow, 1975. This forgotten gem from Rankin Bass was a quiet, tender story about a blind shepherd boy who dreams of seeing snow for the first time. Voiced by Angela Lansbury, it traded spectacle for emotion, simple storytelling wrapped in luminous stop motion. The characters felt fragile, almost carved from candle wax, and the mood was pure winter calm. While critics praised its sincerity, the lack of flash made it fade. From annual broadcasts, it was too slow for Saturday mornings and too soft for prime time. But fans who remember it often rank it among the studio's most heartfelt works. Its message about faith, friendship, and wonder still resonates, even without holiday glitter. If Rudolph was loud joy, the first Christmas snow was quiet peace. A whisper in a world that only remembers the jingles. Number 10. The Little Drummer Boy, Book 2, 1976. Sequels are risky, even in clay. The Little Drummer Boy, Book 2, tried to extend the story of the poor boy with a drum who found hope through music. This time, he helps the Magi deliver gifts while dodging bandits and moral lessons. It had everything from desert chases to heartfelt songs, but without the freshness of the first, it never stood out. Still, the craftsmanship was undeniable, the stop-motion detailing was exquisite, and the film carried a quiet dignity that few children's specials attempted. The emotional beats were deeper, the color palette richer, yet the story felt too heavy for young audiences. It only aired a few times before vanishing into the studio vaults. Yet, for those who rediscover it online, it feels like a lost chapter in Rankin Bass's artistic growth, melancholic, mature, and strangely mesmerizing, proof that even sequels can have souls. Number 9. The Easter Bunny is Comin' to Town, 1977. Rankin Bass didn't give up on Easter yet. The Easter Bunny is Comin' to Town was their comeback attempt, narrated by Fred Astaire and packed with songs, sunshine, and elaborate stop-motion sets. It told the story of Sunny, a young rabbit who spreads joy from the humble town of Kidville to a gloomy kingdom that forbids fun. It was meant to mirror Santa Claus is Comin' to Town, with almost the same structure: a kind-hearted hero, an oppressive ruler, and a musical moral about kindness. But by the late 70s, audiences had moved on. The ratings dipped, and reruns disappeared within a few years. Even so, it's one of the most visually stunning works Rankin Bass ever made. The landscapes shimmer with handmade detail, and Fred Astaire's narration gives it that timeless storybook quality. Watching it today feels like finding an old vinyl scratched, yes, but still humming with warmth. Number 8. The Stingiest Man in Town, 1978. When Rankin Bass decided to tackle A Christmas Carol, they didn't do it halfway. The Stingiest Man in Town was a musical reimagining of Dickens's classic, performed entirely in their signature animagic style. Walter Matthau voiced Scrooge with gruff brilliance, and Tom Bosley lent charm as the story's narrator. This wasn't your typical ghostly tale. It was a full-on musical extravaganza. The songs soared, the ghosts glowed, and the visuals were hauntingly elegant. But despite strong performances, it arrived in a crowded holiday market already dominated by reruns of Rudolph and Frosty. The result? It was quickly buried, airing only a handful of times. Yet its craftsmanship and emotional resonance make it one of the best Rankin Bass productions nobody talks about. If Rudolph is sugar plum fun, The Stingiest Man in Town is a bittersweet masterpiece that deserves its own spotlight. Number 7. Nestor, the Long-Eared Christmas Donkey, 1977. Few Rankin Bass specials dared to be as emotional as Nestor, the Long-Eared Christmas Donkey. Told through the eyes of an outcast animal, it followed a donkey mocked for his oversized ears who finds purpose guiding Mary and Joseph to safety. While it may sound simple, it carried deep themes of courage and kindness. The stop-motion work was breathtaking, with desert scenes glowing under candlelight and characters crafted with tear-worthy detail. But its heavy tone made it a tough sell for young viewers expecting jolly tunes and snow. Over time, Nestor faded from the rerun circuit, overshadowed by brighter fare. Still, its message of acceptance remains powerful. In a catalog full of tinsel and laughter, Nestor stands as Rankin Bass's most quietly profound tale, a fable about finding worth in what makes you different. Number 6. Rudolph and Frosty's Christmas in July, 1979. Think of it as the Rankin Bass cinematic universe before Marvel existed. Rudolph and Frosty's Christmas in July brought together the studio's biggest icons in one crossover extravaganza. The plot? Rudolph's nose starts to lose its glow just as Frosty and his family get tricked into a summer carnival ruled by an evil wizard. The animation was grander than ever, blending stop-motion and drawn sequences for the first time. It even featured new songs and villains worthy of a Broadway show. But audiences didn't bite. The runtime was long, the tone uneven, and the magic just didn't click. Still, it remains a fascinating artifact, an early attempt at a shared universe, decades before Hollywood made it trendy. For die-hard fans, it's a glorious, glittery mess. For everyone else, it's the ultimate, what were they thinking, Christmas special. Number 5. The Leprechaun's Christmas Gold, 1981. Every December, Rankin Bass brought us reindeer, snowmen, and elves. But in The Leprechaun's Christmas Gold, they added something truly odd: Irish folklore. The story follows a young sailor named Dinty Doyle, who accidentally releases a banshee on Christmas Eve, unleashing chaos on a hidden island of leprechauns. Yes, it's as strange as it sounds. Narrated by Art Carney, the special mixed Celtic myth with holiday cheer, creating a world of glowing rainbows, ancient curses, and heartfelt moral lessons. The stop-motion craftsmanship was exquisite, full of glittering green light and intricately designed creatures. But the mix of Irish legends and Christmas spirit left audiences puzzled. Was it a spooky story? A comedy? A sermon? Nobody quite knew. The special only aired once on television and then vanished. Yet it's hauntingly beautiful in its weirdness, a reminder that Rankin Bass were never afraid to get experimental. Today, it feels like the studio's secret folk tale, part ghost story, part Christmas fable, and completely forgotten by almost everyone. Number 4. The Coneheads, animated pilot, 1983. Yes, the same cone-headed aliens from Saturday Night Live. In 1983, Rankin Bass teamed up with NBC to animate Dan Aykroyd and Jane Curtin's oddball extraterrestrials for television. The pilot featured the Conehead family trying to blend into American suburbia while misunderstanding human customs. The animation was bright and stylish, full of pastel neighborhoods and exaggerated expressions, but the humor was sharper than Saturday morning audiences expected. The jokes about bureaucracy, language, and suburban absurdity went right over kids' heads. NBC executives panicked, shelved the series, and the Coneheads returned to late-night sketches instead. Still, this failed experiment is fascinating. It shows Rankin Bass trying to break into adult-oriented animation years before The Simpsons made it mainstream. If it had aired, it might have changed TV history. Instead, it remains a cosmic relic, a lost pilot from a studio that dared to aim its antenna at grown-ups. Number 3. The Flight of Dragons, 1982. What happens when the creators of Rudolph make a dark fantasy about science versus magic? You get The Flight of Dragons. Adapted from a novel by Peter Dickinson and a book by Gordon Dixon, it told the story of a modern man pulled into a medieval world where logic threatens to destroy magic forever. Voiced by John Ritter, James Earl Jones, and Harry Morgan, the film was visually stunning: lush landscapes, smoky castles, and dragons that actually felt ancient. It aired on television only a few times before disappearing into VHS legend. Critics were impressed, but it wasn't what parents expected from the makers of jolly holiday specials. Decades later, it's a cult classic among fantasy fans. Its serious tone, philosophical ideas, and haunting score make it unlike anything else in Rankin Bass's library. The Flight of Dragons was their most mature work, part fable, part fantasy, and all heart, proof that the studio could breathe fire when it wanted to. Number 2. The Kingdom Chums, Little David's Adventure, 1986. By the mid-'80s, Rankin Bass had traded tinsel for television morality plays. The Kingdom Chums, Little David's Adventure, was one of their last attempts to connect with younger audiences using talking animals, glowing animation, and moral storytelling. The plot loosely reimagined the David and Goliath story with a cast of anthropomorphic animals and a gentle message about courage and friendship. It had a cheerful pop soundtrack, bright visuals, and all the sincerity the studio was known for. But audiences didn't tune in. Kids thought it was corny. Adults didn't get it. And networks quickly buried it after one broadcast. Even the VHS release failed to gain traction. Still, it's worth remembering for what it tried to do: teach bravery and kindness through animation without cynicism or flash. It was the final flicker of Rankin Bass's hope that television could inspire rather than just entertain. Forgotten by almost everyone, it stands as a heartfelt curtain call for a studio trying to evolve in a louder, faster decade. So there you have it, 20 Rankin Bass creations buried beneath decades of tinsel and nostalgia. From wooden boys and dragon flights to leprechauns and aliens, these forgotten gems prove that the studio was far more daring than people remember. Some flopped, some vanished, and some still sparkle for those who look. Which one would you bring back from the vault? Drop your pick in the comments, hit like, and subscribe for more deep dives into animation's lost history.